They want to go faster, but they want to keep the same weapons platform that they have. But how do I increase the performance? What lever can I pull to do that? I can pull the case. The case handles all of the pressure.
Yep.
The gun does not know the difference if it's shooting brass or alloy, because the amount of force that the bolt receives is the same as brass or alloy.
All right, what is up, everybody? Mark on the mic here, joined to my right by my good friend Ryan Muckenhern, and across from us at the Western Hunting Conservation Expo, we have Mr. Eric Miller from Federal. Guys, the show has opened. It is a buzz, and I'll tell you what else is a buzz. The cartridge world with the introduction of the 7mm Backcountry. Eric, this thing, I mean, it just kind of hit like a bomb went off, and the internet was abuzz. People were abuzz. Ryan and I talk a lot about cartridges. We're getting flooded with comments. Hey, can you talk about the 7mm Backcountry? And that's why you're here.
Sweet.
That's what, reached out, tapped you guys on the shoulder, and you were going to be here, so it worked out perfect. And yeah, just want to learn more about this thing, the why behind it, some of the technology that's involved, and hopefully answer some of our questions and some other folks out there as well.
Yeah, happy to help answer anything that you guys have.
Perfect. Well, welcome. So, let's just start with this. Like, what is it? What is it good for? And what's kind of the why behind this cartridge? I mean, there's a lot of cartridges out there, right?
There are a lot of cartridges. There are a lot of 284 7mm cartridges. We started with 284. If you look at kind of the semi-custom rifle builder, the rifle, even the custom, 284 is that sweet spot between 264 and 308. There are a lot of long, heavy for caliber, high BC, great weight retention bullets within that class. And when we looked at it and looked at the market, a lot of the rifle manufacturers were taking barrel lengths and cutting them down. Suppressors are easier to get. They're great to use. That whole process is way more simple than it used to be. But as you take that rifle and you cut the barrel length down, and I'm going to talk about 7 caliber, all of these great cartridges that we had out there, you lose performance when you cut that barrel length down, right? So every couple inches you lose feet per second. So you just lost all the great performance of that cartridge. And what we had done is, with the military and solicitations, we had gone down the path of alternative materials. We're going to talk about alloy. And so with the military is really where it started. And they're looking at it for defeating armor. They want to go faster, but they want to keep the same weapons platform that they have. But how do I increase the performance? What lever can I pull to do that? I can pull the case. I can change the case technology. I can start to use alloy. Now I can increase my pressure and I can increase my speed. So with that, out of that was 6 or 7 years ago that we started down that path. We started down the 7mm backcountry path about 2 years ago, and this is the culmination of that. And what it is on these legacy cartridges, doesn't matter what cartridge it is, what caliber, they're going to operate somewhere between 60 and 65,000 pounds of pressure. That's just where it lives. That is the reigning portion of that is the limitation of brass and the pressure that it can hold safely. The guns can hold way more, and we'll get to that later, but that 60 to 65,000 is just where cartridges live. That's where Sami is. That's what the standard is for the market, for the industry. And so with 7mm Backcountry, we took this new case technology, peak alloy, steel alloy, and we are now shooting 80,000 pounds of pressure. So we're dramatically increasing it. And then what that allows us to do is, I'm going to go back to that short rifle platform. I can push a 170 grain bullet, 3,000 feet per second, but out of a 20-inch barrel.
Which is wild.
Yeah. And so if you think of a 24 or 26-inch barrel, you put a suppressor on the end. My gun is now substantially long. It can just reach out. But now with this shorter barrel, I don't lose any performance, and I'm going to beat most of those other 284 diameter calibers, 7mm, 7PRC, for example, I'm going to beat by a minimum of 200 feet per second if I'm comparing apples to apples.
Gotcha.
So,
I mean, and to me, I mean, that's always been one of my sticking points. I mean, I've always preferred a short, handy rifle.
Yep.
But you put that suppressor on there, it becomes unwieldy.
Right.
It's hanging up on stuff. And so I haven't used one. That's kind of a running joke around here. I will be. It's going to happen to the detriment of my ears, right? But I think hopefully, with number one, I think I'm just okay with running a shorter barrel with any cartridge, right?
Sure.
Obviously operating within the limitations of velocity threshold and expansion of the bullet. But this is kind of opening up a new door to be able to do that as well.
correct. Yep. So you're taking that and we went to the firearms manufacturers to start and said 20-inch barrel. That was what we, looked at where we had been at previously with the 24, 26, 20. They quickly went to 16s and 18s.
Sure.
So giving up a little more performance, but now if you're talking about a 16-inch barrel gun with a suppressor, it's really compact, but still has the ultimate performance of that 284 bullet.
I mean, you do something like that, and you're actually still in that short, handy rifle category, even with a suppressor on.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down. Yeah, because you're as equal to a firearm with a 22-inch barrel, really, depending on the suppressor you use.
A lot of these newer suppressors that are coming out, especially with like 3D printed technology, ultralight component, assembly, 6 inches isn't an uncommon length.
No.
To see. I've got a number of cans that land right in that pocket, even some under, and they're fantastic suppressors.
Yeah.
They do a great job of moderation. They don't add a ton of weight. And the 16-inch thing is swirling around my head quite a bit. I put together a 16-inch 308 a few years ago, and now, like, that's a 400-yard at best case gun.
Right.
When I look at, like, the 155 terminal ascent loading, for instance, what that can give me out of a 16-inch gun is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. So you're still still going to that terminal ascent bullet, even at 500 or 600 yards with a short barrel, you're still, I would have to look at the exact number, but it's still 2,500 pounds of energy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're still within, if you can shoot that far comfortably and, are accurate, that bullet still maintains all the energy that it needs to for a clean, quick kill, right?
Oh,
like it
for sure.
contains the energy out for well past that if you can shoot that. But
Like, what kind of muzzle velocities are you getting, like, with that bullet with, like, a 16-inch barrel then?
so it is, the exact number I think is about 2850.
Right.
And so we've gone down through we started with the 20-inch barrel, but we quickly went to 16s, 18s. For an example, Seekins is going to stick with the 22 for a little while, so you're even a little bit faster. But on a 16-inch barrel, you're 2850 with a 170-grain bullet.
Incredible.
Yeah, and that bullet in particular, too, the case technology is unprecedented, what it's bringing to the table, but you've also come to the table with bullet technology like the fusion tip, the terminal ascent, where you have such an incredible marriage of performance and bullet integrity, ballistic coefficient, which is not everything. Like, I'm not necessarily a subscriber to having the highest BC bullet you can get, because sometimes there's trade-off, right? You maybe get into a bullet that has less integrity intentionally,
Right.
but a marriage with like fusion tip or terminal ascent, like that, those two bullets are incredible. Yep. And so now you have a high launch velocity out of a short package with a bullet that's bringing incredible figures to the table, and all of the points that people would avoid that shorter package with, they're moot. They don't matter anymore.
Right.
So this is pretty cool.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of, it's tough to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
You're like, well, what box isn't it checking?
Yep.
And by and large, I'm left scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah.
The questions that we get are recoil, for one.
Sure.
And it is actually a little bit less than a 7PRC, everything being equal. So if you had two equal guns, it's just a little bit less. I don't know that most of us could probably tell the difference, but when you measure it, it is less. But if I handed you a gun, subliminally told you which was which, I might be able to sway you one way or the other.
Sure.
And depending on which one you shot first or second, the second gun, you're probably anticipating the recoil a little bit. So you'd say, oh, that one's more. But it isn't. So 7 Backcountry is just a little bit less than a PRC. So it's comfortable. And if you are shooting suppressed, that adds to it. That just increases the ability for recoil and for sound. Just you shoot better, I think, with the suppressor. We have a couple of bullet offerings, a couple of bonded bullets. Ryan, you mentioned the 2 fusion tipped and terminal ascent, which are both bonded bullets, differently constructed. But we do a monolithic, a Barnes LRX. So we did try to match that. That's a 168 grain bullet. But then for that shooter that does want the high BC, we tried to go out and we did find the largest, heaviest 284 hunting bullet, which is a Berger 195 grain Elite Hunter. So that BC is 755.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Right? So super heavy bullet, but even out of a 20-inch barrel, that's 2850.
Yeah.
Right? So for that market that wants to shoot that heavy bullet, it's cup and core bullet, but high weight, 195 grains for a 284 is just, it's the top, right?
That's high for 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's up, yeah. So,
we talked about these higher pressures, right? And that's what's giving us this velocity out of these shorter barrels. When it comes to the firearm itself, are we dealing with any new things there? Like, are manufacturers going to have to construct their rifles any differently? Like, what considerations are or need to be met there? And maybe it's none.
It's none. When we went with the cartridge, if you look at the cartridge, it's a standard long action. It doesn't have a parent case, but if it did, it would be a 280 Ackley. The 280 has a 40 degree. This is a 30 degree, but same overall length as a 270, 30-06, 280 Ackley. So went to the rifle manufacturers, and it's fairly straightforward for them. They all have long actions. You can fit one more in the magazine. The pressure that we are creating with the 80,000 and then the proof load, the rifle manufacturers didn't have to change their firearms. The firearms are built well above what even our proof load can handle. And a lot of the rifle manufacturers test well above that, and they design the gun so that if something does happen that is catastrophic, it doesn't come back. It essentially chooses the weakest path, and that's usually either down or to the side and front. But a lot of the rifle manufacturers make sure that they understand what happens when you get well above what a proof load is. But they didn't have to change their system. And what happens when a gun does fail traditionally, it's usually the brass that fails. It's just the inherent, there's limitations to brass, and that is what happens in a failure, is the brass, not the actual firearm or the action.
That's a really important thing to point out, because people have asked me too, like, well, holy smokes, 80K, the gun certainly can't handle it. But it's not the steel case absorbing that amount of pressure as a buffer to the firearm system itself versus the brass failing at probably below that pressure anyway. I mean, the steel case really is your first layer of containment in that.
Right.
And that's why the gun does not have to radically change.
Right.
We don't have to make actions twice the diameter. We don't have to use these exotic alloys into, the action itself. We're not putting, barrel extensions over barrels or sleeves anywhere. Yeah, all that, the case is your first line of defense there.
Yeah, that was the limiting factor.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, like, and you mentioned this, like, if you set the 7mm Backcountry next to a 280 AI, you might be hard pressed to, they look very similar.
Really similar.
So my question is what about that was like, yep, that's what we're going to debut, this case technology. Maybe we'll get into some of the powders a little bit. I would imagine it's a blend of components that's making this work optimally. But what about that was like, oh no, when we debut this, it's going to be, it's going to look like this. Like, what attributes of that case made that the one? So
we started with a short action. Talking to the rifle manufacturers, we started with a short action. We could beat 7 mag and we could equal 7 PRC. That was kind of our benchmark. That was, when you look at a lot of the rifle builders, the percentage of their rifles have been 7 PRC. So we could equal that. We wanted to be able to improve upon that. So we started with short action, but then we went to long action so that we could get that extra performance, and that's how we landed on essentially that case. Because if you look at a magnum or a short mag with the shoulder and all of the parts that go into it, feeding and even for us making the brass, that one is not hard, but it's more difficult than a brass standard 270 or a 280. This is where we landed with the standard long action. And again, looking at the rifle manufacturers, they all shoot guns. They all make guns in this standard long action. It's familiar. We landed on the 80,000 because that precedent has been out there. We probably could have gone higher, but for acceptance to start and as we went through this process, that was where we landed, and we got the performance. The added benefit was we beat some other cartridges that we really weren't planning on beating, 28 Nosler, that kind of thing. So it just happened that we landed on this. The engineers spent a lot of time going back and forth and looking at this and working on this. The technology has been out there for a while, but the time that it took to get to where it wouldn't damage the gun, where it wouldn't hurt the extractor, where we gripped the chamber, all of those little parts, that's what the time frame for the engineers, that's what took those guys before launching to get to this point. That's what they worked on.
When it comes to velocities, have you guys, what happens? Okay, if I was going to, get one of these, I would get it with, a 22 or a 6, somewhere between that 22 and 16. But what happens when you put it in a 24 or 26?
So on a 24, and when on the marketing side, they looked at it, and when you go to the shelf, go to your dealer, go to your local gun shop, and you look at the box, on the front of the box, the velocity is based on 24-inch barrel length, because that's what the industry, for the most part, tests barrels in, is 24 inches. I think most people know that, but we just want to make sure that when you pick the box up, it's 24 inches. So if I'm going to compare it to a different cartridge, I'm comparing apples to apples. So it's 3150 out of a 24-inch gun. We shot it out of a 26-inch gun, and we've had some requests through the rifles, what does it do in a 26? Because some people are going to want to shoot a 26. They're going to want the fastest thing out there. They don't have to carry it, per se. Don't have to hike with it. It's 3,200 with a 26-inch barrel, 3,150 with a 24.
And which bullet is that you're
That's
kind of
the
referencing?
170 Terminal Ascent.
Okay.
So that's kind of the bonded flag. That's our match grade hunting bullet, essentially. Yep. The 155, way above. It's 3,150 out of a 20-inch barrel. Even out of a 16-inch barrel, that 155 is over 3,000 feet per second. So lighter bullet, still bonded, but just screaming.
Gotcha.
So, most of it is 20, but 22, and I think the personal preference of people, just are they willing, do they want the shorter barrel? Do they want the 20-inch barrel that a lot of the rifle manufacturers are going to go to? Personal preference and what you're kind of looking out of the cartridge.
Yeah.
So.
And certainly there's going to be folks either from preference or legality's sake that can't own a suppressor or won't buy a suppressor.
Yep.
And then why wouldn't you reap the benefit? If you lived in a state where suppressor ownership was a no-no, but you were a Western hunter, it wouldn't be infeasible to have a 24-inch or even a 26-inch gun set up, and then you just reap added benefit.
Yeah. I carried a 20-inch. We went to Canada with Backcountry. Obviously can't use a suppressor.
Yep.
Just putting it on my backpack and carrying the gun just makes it that much more simple, right? It was a pretty, didn't really think about it, but there will be a portion of the people that just won't shoot suppressed, which is fine. But that option for a 20 or 22 is out there.
Yep.
I mean, exactly what you said. I mean, if you just like that style of rifle, which I do, or you want a mountain rifle or whatever, and you're just trying to shave every little bit, but still get, solid performance. It just makes sense to me.
It's pretty special.
Yeah.
When it comes to what we're putting in the case, is there anything different there than what you might do with a typical, brass case?
Nope. So when we get it to, obviously it starts with a steel tube, put it on the head turn, we form it, we anneal it, we plate it. Once it's to the plated stage, it goes on a primer insert machine and goes on a loader. just like we would load any other cartridge in the factory. And the powder we're using today for all 5 of these loads is a powder we use in other cartridges, fairly common. So the secret sauce, I guess, is really not in the powder. It's in the case. So there are very specific powders, as an example, that I have to use for 7 PRC to hit that velocity. And if I don't have that exact powder, I'm not hitting that velocity. This powder is fairly common for us. What we're using today is proprietary, but just because of the coatings and the amounts that we use. But there will be commercial equivalents that are in today's market readily or attainable. It's not some golden ring that you're going to search for. They will be out there.
And that's an interesting thing too. And maybe not a lot of folks know that. Like, I'm a hobbyist reloader. The powder that when I go to the powder shop or the component shop that I buy from, it is very likely different than what your commercial ammunition manufacturer is loading.
Yes.
And you hit a really good word there. It's an equivalent powder that you could buy commercially, or rather as an individual, than what your ammunition manufacturer would likely be putting in the case.
Right. And they have very similar burn rates. We might have some different coatings on them for various reasons. Every ammo manufacturer has a ballistician, and those guys, probably one of the smartest people that we have at Federal is our ballistician. They know that. They figure all that out. They're looking at burn rates. They're looking at special coatings for residue and things like that, ease of loading to some degree in certain cases, but there are commercial equivalents to most of those.
Yeah.
So are those pressures and the increased velocity, is that just a case of there's more powder in the case?
Yep.
Okay.
So you're just taking a standard long action, and I do refer to PRC a lot, but that is just kind of the mark that we're trying to hit.
Yeah.
And it's actually just a little bit less than a 7 PRC,
Sure.
but you're just putting more in that standard long action
Sure.
To get to that velocity. And again, the case handles all of the pressure.
Yep.
The gun does not know the difference if it's shooting brass or alloy, because the amount of force that the bolt receives is the same as brass or alloy, because this case doesn't move, doesn't grow. You don't have neck growth. When you're going back down the reloading, you don't have to bump shoulders. You're not going to have to do any of that because the case itself doesn't grow at all.
Sure.
You're not gonna fire form these things into something else?
Nope, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So,
going back to the pressures too, like as it relates to the primer, does it create any issues there? Is that a point of where there could be any sort of failure or anything like that?
no, we don't stake the primer, and when it's just standard large rifle primer, and when you put it in the case, it just doesn't move because, again, that steel doesn't move, and it gets into the primer pocket and even over pressure, you won't flatten it, you won't pop it. It just doesn't move out of the case.
Interesting.
And so for folks who are loading and are familiar with it, or those who are thinking about getting into it, like where I've encountered primer failure is actually probably case first, primer second. So a great example that I have is 300 Weatherby. I would lose a lot of times my primer pockets, they'd stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about growth or movement of the case, my pockets would stretch so I could no longer reliably contain a primer in there. They'd be too loose. And so maybe after 2 or 3 firings, I'd lose that piece of brass. Or in a combination of stretch and then backflow, I would erupt or blow my primer, right? Which is actually very difficult to do. And I've set out to audit what it would take to take a given case. Like I did this with 6-arc just because I wanted to know what the limit was, and I couldn't pop a primer. I got to a muzzle velocity that was absolutely absurd, and I still couldn't blow my primer. And it flowed. I anticipated it would, but it didn't explode, right? So it's actually hard to do. Usually when I've seen that happen, I can audit the firing pin or the firing pin channel or the bolt face, and I can see where something went sideways there, not at the primer level or the case level.
Yeah, we don't. So that doesn't happen on this, and even on the proof load, which is high pressure and set by Sami, it's a calculation based off of our starting 80,000. There are no tells even on the proof load. No extractor mark, no You're not flattening the primer or popping the primer. So, and the guns can go even above the proof load, obviously. And we've had some rifle manufacturers that have shot up to 5 proof loads out of the same rifle. And the gun, eventually at the very end, it just can't take all of that abuse, but they survive just fine. But that proof load is a really high pressure, but the guns can take above that too.
Yep.
So,
could you describe like what is a proof load?
So a proof load is set by Sami, so that's the standard that ammo manufacturers, and again, it's based off a calculation of our starting pressure. But it's when you're talking about brass, if I'm 60 to 65, it is the failure point of the brass essentially, so that it survives, and it's about 80,000 in a brass case. And then on the backcountry, it's 114,000 pounds. So we take our case, and in this case, we use the heaviest bullet. So that's the most energy that system is going to feel with that heavy bullet, and load it up to, it's a range generally, but the top of that range is 114, and that's what a proof load is. So some manufacturers shoot every gun with a proof load, some just shoot an action, but each one is different. But it's a quality check and a safety check, and we want to make sure that we pass every one of those. We can't fail at that point, right? So a proof load is just a high-pressure load that tests the limits of a firearm.
And that's so standard, and so few people know about that. We have a good friend of ours who was the former proof master of London.
Oh.
So he would travel to the States to get proof loads made for everything from 22 LR to 155 artillery. And so all of these are going to be overcharged intentionally to audit the, as you stated, either the failure point of the cartridge or case or the weapon system that it's being run in, which is pretty novel to think about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very interesting stuff. And 114,000 PSI that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something else.
And it goes back to just the safety, what is in an action of a firearm, how robust and how tough they really are.
Sure.
Right? They're way above what we're shooting at.
Yeah, modern metallurgy is a wonderful thing.
Yep. And as long as you don't have a failure in the actual metal, and some of them do test for that and look for that. That's a quality aspect for those guys. They do test that and make sure that the metal I'm receiving is what they say it is, and the measurements that they have. But that also tests that part of it too.
Sure.
So on a proof load.
Sure. Mark, can I ask a question about barrels?
Please.
So with cartridges, and you hit on one in particular, 28 Nosler.
Mm-hmm.
Some feedback that I heard from folks is, it's a barrel burner. And that's a word that's been thrown around our industry for as long as I've been in it. And then as a hand loader and a cartridge guy, excuse me, it's something that is at the front of mind, right? So anytime you go higher velocity, you're going to add more engraving force on the barrel. You're going to end up with, a potentially or likely expected shorter barrel life, right?
Yep.
What are we seeing with traditional barrel steels right now and the 7mm Backcountry? Should we have an expectation as consumers?
You can, and it is more than what's out there today, because you're really not throwing that much powder down the barrel. Throat erosion and barrel life are probably some of the top questions that we get. Throat erosion is just the amount of powder that you're throwing and type of powder. And because of the powder that we're using, we don't have a throat erosion issue. We're just not throwing that much down there. And it's the same with barrel life. So we're getting better than expected in what we would say for a 7 mag. Isn't a 7 mag you could shoot till the end of time. But we're getting more than what we would get, say, in a 7 PRC. And for most, this is a blanket statement, most hunters, probably we are not going to shoot out a barrel. A PRS shooter, for sure. Maybe an NRL hunter that's in that might shoot one out, but for most of us, don't know that any of us would ever really get to that point of shooting out a barrel, but it's a valid question, and we're seeing higher numbers than we expected in barrel life. So it's a non-issue for us.
You hit on a really good point there. We have to level set expectations. And if I said 1,000 rounds of barrel life, some people might say, well, gosh, that's not a lot. But when you really unpack how many rounds 1,000 is, I mean, like my father's a great example. He bought a rifle in 1984, and he bought like 5 boxes of ammunition. He still has 2 or 3 of those boxes left. And for many hunters, even enthusiastic hunters, getting to a 4-digit round count is a concerted effort.
Right.
That is shooting a lot. And if you're not hand loading it, and this is like a turnkey solution for you, and the weapon system is great, and your optic is great, and you found a great bullet, and you guys have a great offering of them, you don't have to. You shouldn't expect to go out and have to shoot 5 boxes a session 6, 7, 8 times a year, you know? So it will take a long time to hit even hundreds of rounds on a barrel for most hunters.
Yep.
Truly.
And it's great if you can go out and shoot in the summer, early fall, shoot past 100 yards for, you know, depending on where you live. And, you know, obviously probably easier in the West where we're at today than it is back east. But even if you could shoot a couple of boxes before the season, know that you're on, it would still take
a long time
to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a valid question, one that we expected, tested, and at the factory, we are way harder on our barrels than what you or I would be today. We don't let them cool down. We might rip 20 rounds through them real quick, and then we're going to rip another 20 rounds, and we still don't have an issue with barrel life.
Sure. That's wonderful to hear too. And this, like going back on the cartridge and thinking about, okay, what, as an industry, as manufacturers, as enthusiasts, like what would it have taken to get to these performance levels? And I think what the problem that Federal has solved is we've always had to go bigger or more in the case. And then with all of that, you end up with more recoil, larger actions, heavier weights, lower capacities, complications of feeding, things like this. And you're probably still not going to have that as a high volume gun. You guys have done it in a modest cartridge with relatively modest powder charges, right? Because there's only so much internal capacity that'll hold. You know, regular rifles, higher magazine capacities, better feeding. This is absolutely the next generation, I think, of metallic cartridges and how we could get to that next level of performance without going larger, more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the start. So this is, you know, we started with 284. That's the other question we get. What's next?
Mm-hmm.
I can't say, but they're already working on it.
Good.
This is just the first step in that journey. There will be LE and military applications for it that we in the commercial market will probably never see, but this is just the beginning for us in other cartridges. And it doesn't necessarily have to be hunting, but you could think of target rifles also. But for the LE and military market, that's very different. But just the beginning for us here. And it really sets the stage where we can go with performance, and the rifle manufacturers, if they change something, somebody comes up with a different barrel length or a different idea for it, a different bullet, different twist rate, like we can push the bullet fast enough, we can do some different things down those avenues.
And that is really, for me, what has been the most exciting.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I was excited about this cartridge and this case, but like you guys just said, I mean, this appears to be the new frontier, the next evolution in cartridge development and performance. And I saw this, I'm like, that's really cool. And then my mind immediately started spinning. Yeah. It's like, okay, what's next? What happens when you do this with this? What happens when you do this with this? Yeah. And I really wish you could talk about that right now.
I can't. You would be the first, but I can't.
We'll stay tuned.
All right.
Yeah.
We might be doing another podcast here down the road. Gosh, Ryan, I'm trying to think. I know I had a bazillion questions going into this.
So I'm a hand loader.
Right.
Yes.
You guys put out a video at time of recording. It was a couple weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, about loading the 7 Backcountry.
Yep.
And from what it appears, it's the same process. Some tweaks, right? You mentioned early in this recording that we're not moving brass. Steel is very strong.
Yes.
Is this something on the event horizon that the hobbyist hand loader is going to be able to pick up?
It is. It is. And that's one of the top questions we get.
Yep.
We will start by only having people reload the bright nickel.
Okay.
And for the simple reason that on the bright nickel cases, they are nickel plated on the inside and the outside. Sure. The fusion tipped is that matte colored, still nickel plated, different process. That one just doesn't happen to be nickel plated on the inside. And not to say that in the future we won't, but to start, we're just going to do the bright nickel. And really what you're doing is resizing the neck. And so the reloading companies, if I were to look at the timeline, I would say sometime this summer they will have dies. There'll be carbide dies, but it's really a neck resizing. And the other part is there's going to be a little education on our part and the reloading company in that, to your point, Ryan, don't treat it as brass. Kind of take what you think of brass and reloading. Alloy is different. Like, you don't have to throw everything out, but just reset a little bit and think about it a little different and how you're doing it. We've been reloading for the last, year on a rock chucker and a modified RCBS die. And there's no extra pressure. There's no extra steps, essentially, that you're doing. You're not going to anneal it, I don't think, because you won't be able to get the annealer hot enough. Neck trim is to be determined a little bit, but for right now, because we're not seeing any neck growth, we're not probably going to have anybody, and you'd also break the nickel plating at that point, so that introduces the potential for rust. So there will be a process that we're still kind of working through. We have a number of loaded rounds that we want to get out into the market first, but we have, I say brass, but we have the case item number set up so that when we do hit that loaded number round, we'll get cases out into the market so people can reload them. Virgin cases, not once fired. Everything before that will be the once fired cases. But yeah, so it'll be, and RCBS is working on it because we had that relationship. But we've sent once fired cases to Dillon, Custom Short Action, Lyman. We'll engage the other reloading companies and work with them. And all of the knowledge that the engineers have, we'll share everything that we can with those companies to make sure that they're understanding the process and what they're doing, but they're the experts in it, but we'll help them as much as we can to get to that, put out a reloading die.
And I really do, that video, it was a short clip.
Yep.
It was very, I would say, informal. It's worth the watch. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, until it was released, were thinking like this is some absolutely untouchable voodoo magic, and it's innocuous. And in that, I'm very happy. I also want to say though, I think this is a cartridge for the person who doesn't load. That's a perfect solution,
right?
Because what have I been doing as a hand loader for all these years? I've been trying to maximize the performance that I could get out of a brass vessel. And, trying to, I'm not saying approach these numbers necessarily, but squeeze the most out of it that I can. Well, in this instance, it is a turnkey solution. There is, and I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, there is no more performance that you would necessarily need. So if you're sitting there thinking like, well, I can't do this because, I'm not set up for reloading. Well, you have the factory option, and it's as perfect as it can be.
You don't have to, and a lot of the rifle manufacturers that have models in 7 Backcountry, there's 80 plus models out there now. Yeah. I think there's 13 to 15 companies. In some shape, way, or form, each of those companies have a MOA or a sub-MOA guarantee, and part of that is on the rifle manufacturer, and then part of that is on us as Federal to make sure that we do the load development so that they can shoot a sub or a MOA guarantee. And in a factory-loaded ammo, we try very hard and hold very high standards so that we can guarantee that you could get that in that rifle.
Yeah.
And that's their guarantee, but we're a part of that so that they can do that. They can shoot that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, from a number standpoint, it's like this is, like you were saying, right? This is doing what you would have been trying to get to,
attempting.
And then from the reloading standpoint, yeah, maybe chasing accuracy is kind of where I would see. But like you said, there's also you guys and also the rifle manufacturers do a great job of that as well.
Right.
So
yeah, it goes on both sides. And I think on the reloading side, somebody's always going to want to push just a little bit faster, a little bit, right? And then there's a point of diminishing return, sometimes in accuracy, and you back it off. But we'll have to figure all that out as we go.
Yeah.
But we try really hard, and I think the factory and the adjuster that runs the loader, they understand. We have very tight specs, and they take a lot of pride in making sure that, and we shoot backcountry a lot off of the loader to make sure that we are maintaining that, because when we ship that ammo to the dealer or the customer, and also the rifle manufacturer. We want to make sure that we're shipping them something that they can prove and they can shoot and holds to the accuracy that they're looking for. So,
for the person who is interested in reloading, have you guys seen a discrepancy with number of reloads with the peak alloy case versus a brass case?
Yeah, and that's a little bit fluid. We have an internal spec number that we would like to hit. I'm going to use the example of gold medal 308 brass that you can reload till eternity sometimes, depending on pressure. We're not going to get to that point. It's different. That's the point to go back. Don't think of it like brass. But we have an internal spec. I'm not sure what it'll land, but maybe it's 5 times, maybe it's 7 times, but it's going to be a reasonable number. And again, you just don't see the failure that you do in brass. Might be on the alloy, it might be a neck split, which would be your point to say, okay, obviously I'm done. But yeah, we'll have a number, and it will be a reasonable number to reload within our parameters, or the reloading company is what they set up.
Yep. And five is huge, my opinion, in a cartridge of this capability. And so I mentioned earlier 300 Weatherby. I would get 2, possibly 3 loads out of the case, and that was at standard pressure. That was book data.
Yeah.
And that's a failure of the brass, not me overpressuring the load or anything like that. And like that scale slides. So if I'm looking at one of my smaller format cartridges like 6 ARC, I have an expectation that I get many, many, many loadings. Or 308's another great example. Many, many, many loadings. When I move into 300 Win Mag, 300 Weatherby, or these high tenacity cartridges, my expectation as a hand loader is I'm not getting 5, 7, 9, 12 loadings out of that.
Right.
It's unrealistic for me. Knowing that 5 is attainable, that's incredible. I mean, that truly is. I'm going to lose brass, or I keep saying brass. I'm going to lose cases before I hit 5 loadings. They're going to end up in the weeds.
Yeah.
It's a guarantee, right?
And we're going to learn a lot,
right?
Yeah.
We're going to learn a lot from the reloading companies, and we've been reloading internally what we can't get on a factory loader to test and to ship. So we're almost learning as we go a lot on the reloading side. But we have that number in mind. Something might pop up that changes it, and maybe the fusion tip is less or more. There's a lot of variables in there, but I think we're going to be in that range somewhere. Could change a little bit, but
I think it's marvelous, and it. Knowing, this is just me being selfish, knowing that I can monkey with it just for the sake of monkeying with it, just ups my appeal even more. And I was already at like a 10. So this is good. This is pretty cool.
Eric, I see what we have going on here with, I guess, the loaded cartridge dummies here.
Yep.
For just what's going on here on this side.
So this is showing essentially the process on how to make the case, right?
Okay.
So we're starting with a alloy tube. Put it on the head turn, form it, put it on the press. At this point, it gets annealed, the whole case, and then plated. And again, I'm back to, after this, it goes on to a primer insert, just like a regular loaded process. So it's a obviously different process than brass. But when it gets to a certain point, it takes over. It's just like brass, but it just starts out as a tube instead of a cup.
I thought maybe we were getting a sneak peek at the new straight walls, Ryan.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. How would you like
I'm
your
just kidding.
45-7 to be 458 lot?
So, that's just showing the process that we kind of go through in how we make it. We had some new equipment to do it, but a lot of it we could repurpose from a brass case. Maybe we use a carbide cutter, something like that to do it. But other than that, the tooling is very similar.
And again, you hit on that in that great video where you're loading. It's a modified RCBS die, right?
Yeah.
It had to be.
Yep.
But the majority of that process isn't changing for the hobbyist.
No.
There's not a specialized press. There's not,
Yeah, there's not a special lube or there's not a special wax to, it doesn't, you're not using a cheater bar to pull down the handle. It loads just like brass when you're doing it.
I've helped load 50 BMG before, and that is something else, right? And no, this is, the equipment that I have at home will play ball.
Right.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about reloading here, but I think for a lot of folks out there, that's a moot point. They don't reload. They're not interested.
No.
They do appreciate high performance, and it looks like they're going to get it with this.
They do, and I think, and I don't reload, but I like to know that it is reloadable. It is kind of almost a safety net for me to know that it is reloadable, that the cartridge can be reloaded. Same barrel life. I'm never going to do barrel life, but it's a question I want to ask and that I want a good answer for. The reloading market is not small, but very passionate. We need to make sure that we address it. I think, again, for a lot of people that are going to buy a rifle, they're just not going to. I don't have the time. I don't have the equipment, the space, all of the equations that are in there. I can go out and I can still get a great accuracy out of a factory-loaded, factory-purchased rifle.
Right, right. Yeah, I think a lot of folks are going to look at this suite of available factory loadings and go, okay, well, what attributes of a bullet do I appreciate?
Right.
Try those, and then which one shoots the best out of my rifle?
Yep.
And then off to the races.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. Just the offerings that you have illustrated here with the terminal ascent, the fusion tip, which is a budget bullet, and always has been. Fusion's been a line that has been in Federal's palette for nearly 15 years.
Yep.
And it's always been an economy offering that performs so much better than its price tag.
It's like the economy premium.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good, better, best. It's the better version, and it's still bonded bullet. Different type. It's molecularly bonded. And fusion tipped, it's not as easy as just taking the old fusion bullet, because that essentially was, short, squat, fat bullet. We couldn't just put a tip in it. So we took the front 3/4 of a spear impact, which is made in our plant in Lewiston, which is a hybrid ogive, a modern bullet. Took the essentially front 3/4 of that bullet and the boat tail of a fusion and put them together and came up with fusion tips. And, again, high weight retention, very accurate because it is the way that it is bonded. It's very concentric and it does shoot. If somebody is struggling with accuracy in a rifle, fusion or fusion tipped, because of that consistency and the bullet being very concentric, it shoots in a really broad range of rifles. And that's what we're seeing also with this one.
And when you folks came to market with that immediately, just telling me as a former retailer, as a consumer myself, like you are touching every price point for somebody who wants to do this. And the rifle offerings that are slated for 7BC also touch every price point.
Correct.
From your very budget-minded system to ultra premium.
Right.
And the ammunition complements that too. There's nothing in your available palette that is missing.
No,
not at all.
Yeah, and if we did, there'll be, again, something coming next year. If we're missing a price point, but within good, better, best, we have the better and the best. We'll come back and get the good as we need to. But yeah, and then on the rifle side, again, I said 13 or 15 gun companies. Within that, there's 80 plus models. I think Weatherby alone has 13 or 14 models. You can find a rifle within all of those companies, either price point, accuracy, all the features that you're looking for, lightweight. You can get pretty whippy on a smaller, shorter rifle barrel. You can find it within that assortment.
Yep.
Yeah, it appears there's been some pretty fast adoption by, the rifle manufacturers, and that's always when something new comes out. It's like, oh man, this is new, this is hot, I'm interested in it. And then, folks can have a little bit of trepidation because they want to see it gain that momentum and know that there's confidence in it, and they're not confidence in it, confidence that it's going to be adopted and move forward. So they're not like, oh, I've got this gun, but now what, 10 years down the road, perhaps. So it's good to see that as well.
Yeah, we've never, at Federal, we've never had a collaboration like this with the gun companies. And when we went to the first couple, they had great questions, great challenges. And then as we went to more companies, we had already answered all of those. But yeah, just the collaboration with the gun companies, their marketing team, our engineers, their engineers, going back and forth. We had them to the factory. We would spend a day or two shooting just their rifles, doing load development, doing hand loading essentially, and looking at all the variables in them. We've never had a launch like this. And a lot of it is just because of that collaboration between us and and all of those companies.
Wonderfully exciting.
Yeah, it's been great.
And really, when you unpack that, it's making sure that the consumer is covered down wherever they are on the scale and spectrum. It's, I think, solidifying not just the cartridge, but the tech as this is moving forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And as people shoot it, it answers a lot of questions. And if they come to us, we try to make sure that they understand where we're coming from. And a lot of it was on the engineering side. We did all the background work for it and then went to the marketing said, and this is the parameters that we can hit so we can prove everything. It's, proven on the engineering side, and then just let marketing run with it and tout the advantages of the cartridge.
I like it. Did we miss anything? Did we not ask any questions that are being commonly asked?
Yeah, you touched on all the big top ones that we get at the shows that we've had so far. I think we've covered all of them.
I think I have one.
Yeah.
With the chambering, and I'm talking the physical dimensions of the case and the chamber layout. Can a user expect, or could the hobbyist hand loader have a brass analog for the 7BC chamber?
You could. Yeah, it's Sami approved. It was approved in January. So you could obviously get a chambering in 7 Backcountry and make a dimensionally 7 Backcountry case in brass. Wouldn't have the performance,
Certainly
right? Because
not.
you have the limitations. But if you wanted to, sure you could.
Okay. Is that, just for grins, and maybe you can't answer this, is that anything on the event horizon offering a lower pressure option in that?
No, I don't.
Only because it's defeating the...
Yeah, it's defeating it, and we will always come out with, I think for the most part, when we look at it, it will always be its own cartridge. It will always be something backcountry or something peak alloy. And a lot of that is so that you don't go back the other way and inadvertently load a brass case to the high pressure that you would get with the alloy. And a lot of that has to do with the Sami. Being a member of Sami, we just don't want to go back. We always want to make sure the safety aspect of it, that it'll always be its own cartridge.
Understood. No, I've got a 280 Ackley at home, and I like the cartridge size. I like the cartridge dimensions. In many ways, this is a more intelligent cartridge design than 280 AI to solve some problems with feeding and some issues that I have with the way that my particular chamber's laid out for neck dimension and things like that. And I like this format of case. Magnum cases are fine, but I prefer this if I can have it. And Mark said this earlier. It checks kind of every box that I have. And the performance values stand on their own. Like I can tell you right now, the fastest I can move a 168 grain Nosler AccuBond long range out of my 280 AI is 2960. That's a 25-inch finished barrel length. And what can I do with that gun? Well, I can put a 7 Backcountry chamber on it.
Yep, absolutely.
And I can appreciate more with less. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, I mean, this is an exciting new frontier in cartridge development. I think, like you've alluded to, we're going to see more of this as time goes on. Checks a lot of boxes. And you opened with this, Eric, with suppressors being so popular and gaining popularity, but also just wanting to carry an overall handier, shorter package and still use that suppressor.
Yep.
I don't know. I keep trying to poke holes in it, and I'm not finding too many.
No, we've had a lot of questions, but again, as you shoot it and think about it, and it's not a Western specific gun. I hunt in Wisconsin, right? I can't see past 100 yards, but I would still shoot it. Everybody's backcountry is a little bit different. It's not necessarily Utah or Colorado or Wyoming. It could be Western Wisconsin. It could be Southern Alabama, right? That's your little piece. But within that, you can, still shoot it. I still want the fastest gun. I want the hardest energy. I want the best weight retention in my bullet. All of that. It's just different for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So you can find it within that scope out of all those.
We have local customers bringing in 338 Win Mags to hunt whitetails and Wisconsin's opener. And
Well, not only that, but the attributes that I appreciate in a rifle,
Yeah.
for me, are the same in the Midwest
Yep.
as
Right.
they are out west.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Hunting out of a blind, getting it out of the side-by-side. All of those little aspects
Yep.
that you think about, not having to lean back and put my gun out front through the front window
Yep.
of the blind. All of that portion, it's all different for all of us, but it fits all of that.
cool, man.
Exciting time to be alive. This is like when we went from loose powder to contained cartridges.
Yeah.
And I mean that. Like to me, this is the next step. This
Yeah.
is what we had to come to.
Yep. It's a leap in technology that we've started.
And I'm glad it didn't turn into lasers, because that just sterilizes the whole thing.
Right,
So we're still
right.
burning powder. we're still moving copper and lead down
Yep.
the board. This is great.
There will still be that sweet smell in the air when you
Absolutely.
let one go. Well, awesome, Eric. Thank you so much for taking the time to run us through this. It's fascinating. It's super cool. It's exciting. Can't wait to see how this cartridge continues to move forward, and also what the future holds.
Great. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this one as much as we did. And until next time, we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
ya.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.